Welcome into the show today. A few things that I want to talk about via Minnesota Vikings podcast. And I'm excited to be here. As always, this is a Minnesota Vikings podcast by Minnesota Tim. Thank you for making this podcast part of your day. While you're here and if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button right there. I'd greatly appreciate that. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that subscribe or follow, rate, review button. Whatever it is now. Feels like it changes every single week. But there's a few Minnesota Vikings nuggets that I want to touch on and take a look at today ahead of their matchup, a few days before their matchup against the Tennessee Titans. You know, the most important thing right now is that the Vikings are a 7-2 football team. And two of their losses are against some of the most brilliant offensive minds in the NFL. Ben Johnson, Sean McVay, getting torn up on defense by those two offensive coordinators, offensive geniuses, is no shame. And the Vikings shouldn't feel that way. And, even though it was an ugly victory against the Jacksonville Jaguars, they still got a victory. And at the end of the day, it's a win. You look at the way they won, and, it's not really a way that they can consistently win in the future. But sometimes you just have to power through some poor performances, get a W, figure it out the next week, and you still have 3 or 4 or 5, 6 more weeks until the playoffs begin. So, just now it's about getting yourself ramped up and prepared for that. But it's been clear that Sam Darnold has taken a step back since his first few games for the Minnesota Vikings. And, he's been exactly what I kind of pictured he would be. He shocked the world this year, and he's playing his best football of his career. And my comp for Sam Darnold before this season began was former quarterback and now Thursday Amazon Prime's Ryan Fitzpatrick. You think about Fitzpatrick, and he was mostly known for his time with the Buffalo Bills. He played sensational for like the first 6 weeks of the season, 7 weeks, whatever it was. And then got a big contract extension. Signed a huge deal with the Bills. They put a bunch of money towards him. And then his play just tanked. And he kind of did that throughout his entire NFL career. He would show these 5 to 6, 7 weeks of just unbelievable football play where it's like, you look like one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. He's got the beard. He had the finesse. He had the look. And then he would drop off and look like a second or third or fourth tier quarterback in the NFL. And it's like, we don't recognize this guy. And that's kind of who Sam Darnold has been through the first, 9 games for the Minnesota Vikings this season. First 5-6 weeks of the season, he's in the MVP chance. He's in the MVP conversation. And then you clearly saw a shift following the bye week. He was efficient against the Lions and the Rams, but he was not as pure. And I guess this goes back to the Jets game. He wasn't as pure against the Jets. He wasn't as clean. His decisions weren't as fluid. His accuracy was not as great as it was the first few weeks of the season. And now you look at what Sam Darnold has done, and it's like, okay, we need to get you back to completing touchdowns in the red zone. Because at the beginning of the season, what the Vikings were doing so good early was that their ability was putting the ball into the end zone almost every single time when they got close. And we've clearly seen a shift towards field goals, towards turnovers. And right now, Sam Darnold leads the NFL in turnovers right now, which seems impossible after, the fact that he had only 3 interceptions after week 5. So we've clearly seen a shift, but I guess what is encouraging, or is it really, following his poor performance against the Jacksonville Jaguars, 3 picks in the red zone, I said it wasn't terrible. Because it wasn't a 3-and-out, 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 pick thing. He led 7 scoring drives, at least the potential of of having 7 scoring drives. And that's rare. That's rare air. If you're going to lead 7 scoring drives, you would expect a blowout win. He just threw 3 picks in the red zone. The Vikings could have put up 40 points if he didn't turn the ball over in the red zone so many times on Sunday, which is crazy. You think about, how poor he played, but how good he played up until that point. It's a little oxymoronish because he played so well up into the red zone, and then when he got there, he just fell apart. Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson, they were interviewed by Care 11 News, and they had this to say about their quarterback.
I think it was after the last one. I just told him, I said, hey, we still here with you, baby. We got you. And he said, hey, we good. We all knew he was good.
Sam's one of those guys that, he's on to the next play before, he even gets to the sideline. So Sam's incredible in the huddle, and, he doesn't even think about that stuff like that. Like, doesn't let things affect him, the outside stuff. And so whenever he gets in the huddle, it's a new play.
So courtesy of Care 11 News, local news for the Minnesota Vikings, getting those interviews with Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson to hear their take on Sam Darnold, and also the Purple Persuasion Twitter account that posted it, that allowed me to have access to it by posting it. So my takeaway from Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson is it's one of those things where you can't really say anything else because he is your starting quarterback, and you are stuck with Sam Darnold regardless of who is the other option, because what you aren't doing if you're Kevin O'Connell is putting in a guy like Nick Mullins. We are at a point, as soon as J.J. McCarthy went down and tore his meniscus, needed the surgery, got placed on season-ending IR, immediately at that point, it became Sam Darnold or die, because you are not substituting Nick Mullins. Even on Sam Darnold's worst day, and you could argue that the Jaguars game was close to one of his worst days possible, you're still not starting Nick Mullins. Because even on Sam Darnold's worst day, he still gives your team way more potential than a guy like Nick Mullins can. The only time you're putting in Nick Mullins is if Sam Darnold can't play, meaning he had to get carted off the field and he's on one leg. We saw Nick Mullins make one throw this year to Aaron Jones, which was crazy. You think about that play, I think it's against the Jets. Sam Darnold goes down, like one play, it's like a 3rd and 4. Nick Mullins just slings it right away. This guy's a slinger. And I love that Kevin O'Connell put him in a situation to sling it. And Aaron Jones made a tremendous catch. But you're never starting Nick Mullins. And the players know that. Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson know that. Sam Darnold is the QB1 for the Minnesota Vikings the rest of the season. And Minnesota Vikings players are going to show their support to him because there's really no other choice. And you don't want to make headlines by saying, Sam Darnold, he really stunk it up today. We really lost belief in him. Even if you're thinking that and you're talking to your teammates behind closed doors about that, the Minnesota Vikings roster right now, it appears that besides, one player, Jordan Addison, I'll just say it, it seems like everyone has a pretty good head on their shoulders. They're good talkers. Seems like they stay out of trouble for the most part. They're good with the media. They're good teammates. Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in football, didn't hold out when he didn't get a contract. Like a Jamar Chase, he yelled out. He missed like the first game of the year. He almost missed the first game of the year if he didn't. But you got the best wide receiver in football showing up on a rookie contract and playing every available game that he could play for the Vikings last year, despite a hamstring injury. And now you got Aaron Jones and T.J. Hawkinson saying the right thing about Sam Darnold. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not buying really much into what these guys have to say because it's what they're supposed to say. And credit to them for saying what they're supposed to say, but you're never really going to get their full opinion on Sam Darnold's play when a media member is asking him the question. You got to get like a secret microphone, under their clothing so that you can really hear their true opinions about teammates and stuff. There was another story shared by Alec Lewis, and Alec Lewis had this to say, and I'll share the screen with you if you're on YouTube watching this, and if you're on Apple or Spotify, I'll just read it to you. Alec Lewis says, Kevin O'Connell does not call plays from a script. And here's what it says. Let's set straight a misunderstanding about Kevin O'Connell's play calling. The Minnesota Vikings coach does not call plays from a script. Some NFL coaches do, especially early in games. They spend an ungodly amount of time brainstorming the correct way to unveil their plan. In a sense, O'Connell is similar. There are plays he prefers over others. Some he knows he will call in the first quarter, but it is never definite and is always adaptable on the fly. I read this caption by Alec Lewis, and I believe that he's 100% correct. But I believe that this is not a unique Kevin O'Connell kind of thing. I believe that every NFL head coach would adapt on the fly and change their play calling scheme or play calling sheet or their plan if it needed them to. And let me explain what I mean by this. If, for example, let's say the NFL coach that was coaching whatever team, the Detroit Lions, let's say Ben Johnson had a game plan, a script of 10 plays to start the game. And let's say script number 1 play was a run. Okay, script number 2 play got 2 yards, whatever. Script number 2 play was a play action pass. Jared Goff, incomplete to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Okay, so it's 3rd and 8. Let's say that the script was a run play on 3rd and 1, or let's say the script said you got a first down on 2nd and 8, and then you got a 1st and 10, and then it's a run play. If that third play is scripted to be a run, there is no way on any earth that Ben Johnson is going to stick to that script and run a run play to try to get a first down on 3rd and 8. NFL coaches adapt on the fly all the time. And just like Kevin O'Connell, they have an idea on what they want to do. They have plays that they prefer. And I'm sure NFL teams script plays to a certain extent. Just like Kevin O'Connell, I'm sure scripts plays to a certain extent. I'm sure that O'Connell knows before the game starts which offensive play that they're going to run first. He's got to. And then he adapts from there, as does every single NFL coach. So I hear this unique skill set by Kevin O'Connell, Alec Lewis. O'Connell does not call plays from a script. I believe that to be true. But let's not just come out here and say, well, Kevin O'Connell's more unique than any other NFL coach. I see his reporting. They spend an ungodly amount of time brainstorming the correct way to unveil their plan. And I'm sure that's true to a certain extent. But coaches, I'm sure, have other plays in their back pocket that can go off script if a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 1, 2nd and 4 play happens based on the outcome of their first 2 plays. What I'm not believing is that they have a script in their hand, and regardless of the down and the distance, they're calling that play regardless. I don't think that's happening. And I don't think that would ever happen because coaches need to fluctuate what they call based on the defensive looks, based on the outcome of the previous play, and much more. So I get it. I love Kevin O'Connell as a coach. He had a couple of calls in the Jacksonville Jaguars game that were highly questionable, like the reverse as the Vikings were in the red zone. That was a questionable. And I'm the last one to question play calls. I'm the last one to say that this play call sucked because it's the easiest thing to do, to sit on the couch post-play and say, wow, what were you thinking on that one? It's the easiest thing to sit on the couch on a 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 and say, you should have run the ball up the middle. They run the ball up the middle. They get stuffed. And then you say, oh, they should have ran a play action. Everybody knew the run up the middle was coming. So I tried to pause and reflect on the actual play call before I dive into, that was the worst play call ever, because it's a really, really tough position. I do not envy offensive or defensive coordinators, because offensive coordinators, it's not like you have all day to select a play. Play clock starts over at 40 as soon as the play is over, and you got to already have that play down. There's no okay, let me flip through this page of plays here, and let's just see what I like here. You got to have that play immediately to the quarterback so they can get to the line, go to the huddle first, get to the line, check out of that play if they need to, look at the defensive scheme on that play or lineup or whatever you want to call it, and make a change if they need to. So before the play actually happens, they have to be a step ahead. It's not like, okay, let me just see what we got here. Let me take my time. Let me really dive deep into my mind and see what kind of play that we can run here. What makes offensive coordinators and play callers so good is their ability to see the play ahead of the first play. So, let's say it's a 2nd and 8 or whatever for the Vikings, for Sam Darnold. And based on what happens on that play, O'Connell has to have 2 play calls in his mind. He has to have an idea for a 3rd and 8. He has to have an idea for a 3rd and 1, a 3rd and 4, maybe multiple plays in the back of his mind. He's already got to be thinking about what play call he's calling next, because if you wait until that play's over, then it's got delay of game written all over it. Another play is 3rd and 1. Darnold's already thrown 3 picks. He needed 1 yard. Aaron Jones was solid. He was back in the game at this point after he got hurt. Run the ball. Play action. Darnold takes a sack. You got to punt the ball back to Jacksonville. That's a situation where I would have ran the ball because of Sam Darnold's inept play when the Minnesota Vikings needed it most. Sure, he drove the Vikings down the field 7 times and had opportunities to score. But he was off. And everybody could tell he was off. He was threw behind Justin Jefferson a bunch of times. Threw over Jordan Addison a couple of times. Once for sure he had a time to throw it into the end zone for a touchdown and overthrew him. So why are you trying to find something in Sam Darnold that clearly is not there? So Kevin O'Connell, great play caller. I'm a big fan of him as a head coach for the Vikings, and I hope he's the head coach for a long time. He's going to get a contract extension this summer, and there's going to be no doubt about where he's going to be coaching long term. It will be for the Minnesota Vikings, and he will sign a contract extension this summer. But let's not act like he's, the most unique player, person, or coach in the NFL because he doesn't call plays from an exact script. I bet a lot of coaches do the exact same thing. But anyway, I think those are my 2 big takeaways, my 2 big takes from today's show. And I'll be back again tomorrow. I think Tony will be joining me. Jake might be joining us as well. Last week we had a lot of fun. And if you did not check out that episode of Minnesota Vikings Trivia, it was a great, great time. It was Jake versus Tony in a trivia contest to answer which players played for the Minnesota Vikings and Eagles. Tony's a big Eagles fan, and Jake is a big Minnesota Vikings fan. This is a Minnesota Vikings podcast. So what we did was what players played for both teams. And I ran through the list of like a Randall Cunningham, a Chris Carter, a Gary Anderson, a Linval Joseph. I think I did like 5 players, and it was a good time. So if you haven't already, I would highly suggest that podcast because it was one of the funniest podcasts that we've done, and it was a good time. So do that if you have the time and energy, and you just want a good laugh too. So hit that subscribe button right there, and thank you for making the Minnesota Tim podcast, a Minnesota Vikings podcast by Minnesota Tim, a part of your day. Thank you to the sponsors at Hokeland Farm. And if anyone wants to sponsor this podcast, reach out to my email, timothypaulparachka23@gmail.com.